All right.
Good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Everybody's here. Good evening and welcome to the February 23rd, 2021 Mercer Island Arts Council special video meeting. I'm Erin Vivian, Chair of the Arts Council. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order, tonight's meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The video of this meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff, Sarah Bluvas and Ryan Daly, and Council Liaison Salim Neese and consultant Emily Moon are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members may be listening to the meeting by telephone or via internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. Board members, please ensure that your microphones are turned on for the roll call. Will staff please call the roll?
Okay. Erin Vivian.
Here.
Amy Barnes. Anu Meha.
Here.
Eric Gordon.
Here.
Shishi Shakes. Suzanne Scone.
Here.
And Gayleen Baden.
Here.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. All right. So before we start, just remember that we're trying to use the raise hand feature and we will try to get to people who raise their hand first. And you can always do this just in case. And either Sarah or myself will see you. Tonight's agenda will not include in-person public appearances in accordance with Proclamation 20-28-11 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order. However, individuals wishing to speak live during the appearance portion of our meeting may do so by telephone or using the Zoom teleconferencing application, provided they registered their desire to speak with the city staff by 4 p.m. today. Sarah, did anybody register?
No appearances registered.
Okay. So tonight's primary agenda item is to conduct the second workshop for Arts Reset Planning, which is part of the city's overall effort to develop a reset plan for recreation, the Mercer Island Community and Events Center, and arts. We are joined again tonight by consultant Emily Moon, who will guide us through this workshop with support from Sarah Bluvas, the city's Economic Development Coordinator. I welcome Sarah and Emily, who will guide tonight's exercise. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Happy to be here. Sarah, did you have any introductory comments before I just launch in?
Nope, I was just going to turn it over to you, Emily.
Okay, really good, really good. Thank you all, first and foremost, for your participation in between the last workshop and tonight. We conducted a survey of all of you, and we received some really great input. And so we'll be going through that tonight and orchestrating our discussions around that input. Before I get to that, though, I wanted to just give the lay of the land again for a quick minute for anyone who might be tuning in, and also just for the Arts Council members' benefit. We are still on a timeline where we are going to be collating some recommendations in March from recreation staff and from that commission, and then also from the Arts Council, and packaging that up and sending it over to the City Council for some feedback. And actually, I think the first time it will go over to City Council will be in April. So the collating work, the finalizing of recommendations from the Commission and the Arts Council will be happening in March. And then in April, those recommendations will be forwarded to the City Council. Right now, tentatively speaking, we are anticipating a joint meeting with the City Council and the Parks and Recreation Commission. And I think we need to have some conversation. I'm not sure how Mercer Island does it, if Mercer Island has ever had a kind of three-way meeting between boards and commissions, but on April 20th, that would be the proposed date that the City Council hears a presentation of the recommendations, provides input, and then the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Arts Council would go back for its regular meeting in May and make any tweaks based on that input from City Council. And then we would return the product to City Council, and they would take action on it probably at their second regular meeting in May. And again, that timeline reflects our desire to have some clarity on what the city would like to provide in terms of recreation, community center, arts, programs and services going into summertime, fall, through the end of the year. And furthermore, we're hoping to give them some indication of what direction we're headed beyond 2021. But that moment in time in April, May will be for us to really ask for some resources as well to implement our recommendations and have enough lead time to go and develop whatever it is we need to develop or hire whatever staff we need to hire, etc. So that's the game plan. And I wanted to just take a second to pause and ask if there were any questions about timeline or that part of the process.
I just have a question. So for the presentation of our recommendations to City Council, that will be during an April 20th meeting that also includes the Parks and Rec Commission, but that's not a regular City Council meeting. That's like a special meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's a special meeting. And so Arts Council members, I want to tell you, this is tentative as of today. And as I said, we need to work out that it's kosher, okay, to have a three-way board and commission meeting. I suspect that it is. It's been done elsewhere. But what that also means is we want to wrap up the Arts Council recommendations in the month of March so that we're able to make any final kind of approvals of what will be sent over to the City Council during your regular meeting in April. And I don't have that date in front of me, but very early in April. And then we would finalize it for City Council's packet for a special meeting that hopefully will be a joint meeting between Parks and Rec Commission and the Arts Council on April 20th. And that's when they will get the verbal presentation and the full packet.
Okay, thanks.
And just piggyback on that, the April Arts Council meeting is April 14th. So it would be the week before that special City Council joins.
Okay. Just some nuts and bolts, Sarah. We may want to talk about that too, because thinking about Parks and Rec Commission's regular meeting is the week prior, and April 14th may be right around the packet deadline, I imagine, for City Council. So again, work in progress. Early April, I think the Arts Council will need to settle on the immediate action plan and anything else it wants to provide to Council. Any resources it wishes to request for 2021, and then it will get into the packet for that April 20th meeting. Okay.
As a logistics point, if we're
Yep.
wanting to have that finalized by the Arts Council before the 14th, we would either have to do it at our next meeting or call a special meeting or change the date of that April meeting. And the week before that is spring break. I mean, I know I'm going on a really wild international vacation. I don't know about anybody else. No,
Yes.
I'll be here. But in past time, our past life, people didn't like to schedule meetings during breaks. So
Yes.
that
Yes.
might not be an issue anymore.
Yes. Understood. Thank you for that. So obviously we have some logistics to work out, and we shall. So we'll do some sleuthing and strategic planning, and then Sarah and I will communicate with all of you and kind of seek some input on what would work best with your calendars and also with the deadlines for the packet for City Council. Okay, great. Any other questions? I didn't see any other hands up. Okay, all right. So the last little bit of business before we jump in on survey results is just wanted to also share the purpose of the reset project is to take this moment during the pandemic when many programs and services for the city in this realm of parks and recreation and arts have been postponed, tabled, whatever verb you want to use. And the City Council has asked us to make recommendations to them on how to start up some programs and services in these areas. And in the case of recreation in the community center and also for the arts, the current approved budget is limited, but the City Council wants us to come back and say and express what the game plan would be, what is needed to carry out that game plan. And then we will have some dialogue with them about what they think they are able to provide in terms of resources from city's general fund. So that's our goal, is to come up with some recommendations for programs and services from the realm of arts for the remainder of 2021. And then if we have enough time to move beyond that, then we want to turn our attention to the longer term implementation plan, thinking about what comes after 2021, when hopefully the world as we know it returns to a little bit more of a normal state. And we can start thinking about how to implement the other goals and vision of the Arts Council and how to do so in a thoughtful manner, bringing things on as the city begins to continue to build up its resources and its capacity. So that's our objectives for the reset plan. And I am going to try to share my screen now and transition to showing you survey results and anyone who's online that's watching. So here we go. Oh, Sarah, we didn't practice. I have a host disabled.
You should be good now, Emily.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Are you guys seeing the document? Yes? Okay, great. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to read you all the results of the survey. I hope that many of you have had an opportunity already to look through the results and become familiar with what your colleagues had to say was of importance to them and how they believed the Arts Council should be focused in the next year and beyond. However, I am also aware that we received responses from 2 individuals just over the last day. And because those weren't part of the packet, I thought I would maybe verbalize those results. And I expect that some of you haven't had a chance to see those results since they were just emailed by Sarah today. So I'm going to read those. Also, I want to cover what questions we asked so that folks at home have an understanding of that. So we asked Arts Council members, what does the community need now from the Arts Council? How can you, Arts Council members, support that need as the Arts Council, given the current conditions of the city and the pandemic? And what are the 3 most important objectives the Arts Council needs to accomplish during this year? What should be the focus for 2021? And that's really akin to the verbiage I'm using about the immediate action plan. That's the time period for the immediate action plan. And then the last question was, as you look past 2021 and the pandemic, how should the Arts Council measure its success? So tonight we're going to review some of those results as Sarah has synthesized them to some degree, and seek your feedback, generate some discussion, and hopefully get to a place at the end of the meeting, perhaps, where we have narrowed down to what we think we might want to recommend as those program services or actions for the remainder of 2021. And then our goal for your next regular meeting in March will be for Sarah and I to come back with that list tidied up, and maybe some more specifics about the how to implement, and also some fine-tuned details in terms of the resources that would be needed to implement that plan. And then we'll have a discussion around that, make sure that's indeed the way that you want to go, and get ready to make that as a recommendation to the City Council. Okay, since I have told you what the headers are on this, I am going to try to scroll down and show you the last couple of responses to the survey that were received after the packet went out to all of you. So
Emily,
second to the last respondent said that the community needs from the Arts Council now as much arts-focused distraction, diversion, connection, and inclusion we can generate safely. How can you support that need as Arts Council given some of the current conditions? This respondent said, outdoor programming and activities designed for small groups or individuals. Arts Council could consider online programming, but that is less desirable with all the activities already forced online. Any art maps or guides should be inclusive for people with physical challenges and seniors. Then on the question of what are the 3 most important objectives this year, the respondent said, protecting and maintaining public art collection, bringing attention to the public art collection with interactive activities, programming and arts experience to provide a diversion and opportunity to connect as a community, and with collaborating with, you have to help me out, do you say MyVol? Yes, okay, thank you, and other organizations. And then the last question was looking beyond 2021 and the pandemic, what should the Arts Council measure its success by? And the respondent said the lowest bar is if we are still operating as a council and have provided at least one arts-focused project for the community. Beyond that, this feels like a question that should be iterative and refined as we move forward. Did I just read the third to last response? I did, sorry. All right, so that one probably was in your packet. Same questions. Second to last respondent said, the community needs our support in building connection within the community and fostering social emotional well-being. Through creative processes, we can also help support the economic well-being and of our local businesses. We can utilize our creative and volunteer forces to devise projects that would fit within our current limitations and address the scope of community needs. We can also seek grants to help accomplish goals. And then to the question of 3 most important objectives, respondent said, devise a short to medium range plan of reasonable projects and goals to address immediate needs of the community due to pandemic crisis. Ancillary to this would be to review current outdated policies that may impede goals and revise. Present plan to City Council to reestablish a budget, accomplish 1 to 2 targeted projects. A successful Arts Council provides sustained support to the community through projects and programs, whether they consist of our own programming or providing programs that offer support to community arts groups. And then the last respondent said that the community needs from the Art Council now to be reminded of the abundant sources of quality art we have in the city's possession and produced by Mercer Island artists. And how do we support that? Creatively doing community outreach to share these resources, priorities for this year were to develop and firm up a reset plan for development of arts and culture programs beyond 2021 once we have the budget and staff allocated. And then lastly, for looking beyond, this respondent said, I don't feel that I have sufficient information to look beyond 2021. So I'm going to switch out of this view. You have most of these responses in your packet, and I'm just going to ask if there's any desire to have a conversation about the survey results. So let me stop the share real quick. Great. We're going to go through kind of a synthesis of all of this and try to pull out some themes and walk you through that. But before I do, I just wondered if there were any general comments, anything that you want to share as themes that you saw, anything that resonated with you. And Erin, I'll look to you to help me identify who would like to speak.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know if you wanted to just call on the hand. Gayleen has had her hand raised.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not able to see that as well.
Hi, Emily. I have a question.
Sure.
One of the, for me, barriers to giving a realistic answer is the resources question. So when we're to consider how to implement a particular project and then what the resources needed, one of the things you've mentioned is that we do have the ability to go to the city council and ask for some sort of funding. And have they given you an idea about the range that request might be?
No, and I had a conversation actually with the city manager just today about how, particularly for board members, this can feel like a chicken and egg sort of conversation, that the city council is saying, we want to know what you want to do first, and then we can tell you whether or not we think that's feasible. And then board members on the other side want to say, just tell us what's feasible, and then we'll tell you what can fit to that. Either approach works, but we are in the situation right now where the city council has asked for your ideas, and then they will comment on whether or not they feel those are feasible. Having said that, though, we know there are probably some large parameters. Those parameters include not just financial resource constraints, but it's the pandemic related guidance, from the state that's a parameter for us to consider. I think that there's also a little bit of strategy going into asking council for resources in a time when the budget has been cut and when many city services have been eliminated or reduced. I think going in and asking for, multi-million dollars, I'm making a ridiculous statement, but multi-million dollars, the council is probably going to be less apt to say yes to that. So there is a little bit of strategy of saying, what do we think they might feel is palatable at this moment? I know that doesn't help, but
Emily and I haven't talked about this, but I was just, thinking if you all need kind of a number to work from or anything like that, your previously pre-pandemic, your operating budget was about $39,000. The slate of projects that you worked on within that operating budget. However, that doesn't include all of the staff and other kind of ancillary resources. So, when you're thinking about that, you had the kind of funds to pay performers and artist contracts and all of that, but there are other staff resources that we would have to identify too. So, from a project perspective, before you were operating in the right under 40 range, and you had a full-time staff member who was assisting you as well as additional staff and departments who, participated in various ways. So that 40 number could be helpful to narrow it down, but remember, the slate of projects and everything that you all were doing before. So I don't anticipate we'd get back to that level of activity based on where we are at in the pandemic and the year and capacity, but maybe that is a good starting point to work back from.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, that's a good point.
And are we able to understand what staffing costs are? Because I mean, I know how to do project budgets. I'm a grant writer and I do them regularly. So if we had some of that kind of information too, I'm perfectly willing to try to, create a budget that includes staff time.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I think where we're trying to start is not from the dollars and cents yet, but to really understand what are your hopes, what are your goals, what do you think you might want to provide, and then build the budget based on that. And at that point, then we can start to analyze what's needed in terms of staff assistance and how much will that cost.
I kind of have a little follow-up question to that, just because of, like you brought up, the strategy and the state of our city and the politics happening. Where do we decide to put in effort to building a plan if we anticipate it being not approved? Like, there has to be a little bit of an understanding of what we might be able to get, right? I mean, we don't want to spend a lot of effort if we're just going to be told no. That's our strategy. Like,
right. So I understand that no one wants to waste time, building up the perfect dream and then have that rejected. I think through our conversation tonight, we can dialogue about what feels like it's reasonable. I will tell you right now, I'll give you an example. If the Arts Council said, I think we should do summer celebration this summer, the way that we've done it in the past, then I will advise you that I don't think that's going to be a successful ask, and that we need to scale back in terms of impact on staff, in terms of consistency with kind of the COVID framework that we've talked about, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think we can generate the ideas, and we can try to get to a reasonable package that has a high likelihood of success with the city council.
okay, that's good. Thank you. That's good news.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. I think you alluded to what I was actually, what I'm about to say is, I think a good starting point is to just gauge the interest of council members, like what they are trying to achieve given the limited resources, and that should be a good starting point for us, because we don't want to be too ambitious. If we get a feel for that, I think that can direct our discussions. And like that example that you gave, that's an excellent example. Like if you have, or Sarah has, or even Ryan has that kind of information, I think you guys would be the best suited to guide our conversation tonight. Because ultimately, I think the action plan should be very specific. It cannot be ambiguous, that it's harder for council members to be able to understand what we are trying to ask, and also be able to, that we should also be comfortable in achieving it.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what I can offer as advice and counsel on that, having not polled the city council about what they think is reasonable, as I said, they're reluctant, I think, to do that because they want all of you as the appointed board and commission members to help generate the ideas, and they don't want to stifle that. Having said that, though, I know from some of my conversations that there's, I think, limited appetite for large scale events where people are going to gather all at one time in close proximity. That many of the cities around us have postponed, canceled events through 4th of July or even beyond that. And plus, just from a practicality standpoint, the lead time to get those things organized at this point is pretty tough. So that's one parameter, or one thing that I think we should steer away from. That doesn't mean that we can't come up with a great idea for how to offer some sort of community in a safe way that that doesn't maybe cost a ton of money, that doesn't require a ton of staff time, that doesn't negatively impact the city's goals in terms of COVID prevention, right? So that's one piece of input that I can give you. I think that the other input that I have heard is, let's not bite off more than we can chew. And so to your point, Anna Meha, I think the feedback we've received thus far is pick a few things that we can be successful at, we can get off the ground. And some of those things may be very activity oriented, maybe public facing, but some of those might be items that the council can just work on, sort of internal actions. That might be the policy development piece. It might be building more marketing program around the arts collection, et cetera. So I think they're open to a range of ideas, different styles of either program services or activities, but probably not open to doing a long list of those. A shorter list is going to be more palatable.
And I'll just chime in and say there, one of the responses in the survey, I think, hit on it, is that this, it's not like we're asking different boards and commissions who are participating in this process to create the perfect plan that will not evolve or change in any way. I think it really is a phased approach. This needs to be iterative. So the ask to City Council in April and May isn't necessarily, okay, well, this is what we're doing for the next 10 years, or this is, we want to go full force at the first stop. It really is building back up. So yeah, what can we do really well? If you anticipate that we're going to council and we'll get an approval in May for funding or a staff resource or anything else like that, then from May to December is kind of your horizon line. That's what we're looking at for 2021. But it's not just in 2021, right? It's beyond, as we do sort of the phased in planning for the next couple of years post 21. More of those things will come out, and maybe identifying, more projects or more elements that you used to do, and identifying, knowing the resources that you need for those, and kind of building back and going back for additional asks and that kind of thing. So just this first kind of city council presentation and request isn't the end all be all by any means. It's really, what do we think realistically we can do this year, and where do we realistically think we'll go in the next year or two, and we'll continue to build on that. One of your objectives may be to build out a 10-year plan and all of the resources you want and need, or I remember someone had mentioned in the responses a sustainable funding model that doesn't require all city funding. Now's the chance to build that. So I hope that we can keep in mind that it's not set in stone. This first council presentation isn't the only request or the only time. It's really just kind of the first opportunity to get back to council and start building back programs and services for arts, but also recreation, and reopening the community center and what that looks like.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. That was very helpful. I'm going to tag on to that and just add that when we go to City Council, we don't have to have all the details worked out. City manager and I talked about that this afternoon, that we may have chapters that are still draft in this proposal. So you might have a recommendation to them that you work on a set of policies, and maybe you haven't fully identified exactly which policies, or maybe your recommendation will be, we want to hold some sort of, event for community members, but city council, because you're going to have to give them enough details to sell them on this, right? You may say, but we understand the event needs to look something like this, or here's a few examples that probably meet the criteria that city council has in mind, but you don't have to name that thing. You don't have to be so specific about what hour of the day it's going to happen. So we can add to the proposal once we get their input and they say, yes, we think that's sounding really good, and we're willing to give you the seed money to go and make that happen. Any other broad input on survey? Because next what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the column that had to do with immediate action plan, the 3 top priorities for the remainder of the year, and we're going to narrow our focus to discussing that input. Everybody ready? All right. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And need to get it bigger. How are we doing? Can you see that? Okay. Okay, so again, this is just taking that input for the question of what should our top priorities be for the remainder of 2021. And Sarah did an excellent job of summarizing. So just taking keywords out of each of your responses and put them into this chart. So there's almost a whole alphabet worth of ideas. What I would like to do is just quickly read through them, and then I would love to turn it back over to you to discuss. What do you see here? What would you like to advocate for? Maybe it's your ideas, or maybe it was somebody else's ideas, and then we can see if we have some consensus around a smaller group than a full alphabet worth of ideas. So 3 most important objectives for the Arts Council. We had input that the focus for 2021 should be supporting the high school community unity mural project, exploring COVID-19 impacts on our lives in arts-focused ways, invite the community to enjoy the public art collection, press releases, stories, etc. about existing art, deliver an arts culture outlet or experience for the public that is catered toward both mental health and belongingness of community and artists, adopt a sustainable funding policy that does not depend solely on city's budget, protect assets, engage community in the arts, support Mercer Island artists, create one community event to support, encourage arts engagement, perhaps with monetary options to create a fund for a project to be created by a local artist, protect and maintain public art collection, raise awareness of public art collection with interactive activities, program an arts experience to provide a diversion and opportunity to reconnect as a community, collaboration with MyVol, etc. Increased partnership with council, local businesses, partners, and artists as an ongoing mechanism to cater to all members of the community and continuously improve on them. Devise a short to medium range plan of reasonable projects and goals to address immediate needs of community due to pandemic crisis. Ancillary to this would be to review current outdated policies that may impede goals and revise. Present plan to City Council to reestablish a budget. Accomplish 1 to 2 targeted projects, and develop and firm up a reset plan for development of arts and culture programs beyond 2021 once we have budget and staff. So those were the ideas, not verbatim from your input, but summarized a tad. And they haven't been they haven't been grouped. We just took them straight across from each of your responses to the survey. So you see, like, for example, F and J, both speak to protecting the public art collection. So there's some repeated themes here, but I'm going to turn it back over to you. I'm going to leave this on screen unless you want to switch out of this view, and ask you to just share with me where do you see some common themes? What would you like to advocate for as we try to funnel our conversation toward a handful of initiatives for the remainder of 2021?
Who wants to go first?
I'm looking for raised hands. Anameha.
So I can see three themes actually that jump out to me. One is obviously look at the policies, and that can cover a wide range of, funding, any outdated policy that may impede our goals, and how do we interact and establish like a partnership. That can all be like an internal work. The second is obviously protecting and promoting our arts and local artists. So that's more on the marketing side. And the third theme is do one or two projects where we engage the community in some way. And what those one or two projects could be, that is to be determined. Those are the three themes that jumped out to me.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Suzanne? I'm calling everybody. We're just going to do it Robin.
I'll just leave it on. Thanks, Anameha. That helped kind of group them together. I have been thinking a bit more about the policies and how we have that in the comprehensive plan, the document that some of you developed, the arts plan, and it's sort of hard to find it. It's like Appendix B of chapter at the very end. And I just wonder if we need to take a look at, it feels like we need to take a look at how to integrate arts into the comprehensive plan throughout the comprehensive plan, instead of just an appendix at the back that no one seems to even really know about. And then when I did look through that, it already is a bit outdated and maybe had a bit of a slant to it just because of what was happening at the time. So it might be worth kind of updating either that appendix, and I think it's an appendix, but also seeing how to integrate it into all the policies.
Suzanne, are you saying that the appendix part of the comp plan, arts and culture comp plan, you feel like it should be integrated?
I think it should be integrated, just like I don't think I probably have a comp plan here, but say in your comp plan, I mean, you open up Mercer Island comp plan at the very beginning, it would say that, we value nature and parks and, whatever our values are, and make sure that our values also include, arts and recreation or whatever.
I'll tell you what happened with that comp plan is that, I was a big part of the drafter of that. And because people left, there was like a group of us and everyone kept leaving the Arts Council. So I was left, but it wasn't made clear to me that arts and culture comp plan, I thought it was going to be like its own section within our comp plan, like land use element and arts and culture. But instead they wrapped it into the land use element, and I had no idea from like the beginning that that's what the intention was. Yeah. And throughout the process, talking with Evan, who I don't even know, is he with the city anymore? No, that we could at a later date revisit that. It was just at that point, the timing of whatever they needed to do to get those amendments passed, there were a few of them. That's the way they could do it, because to create a whole new section, I was told would take longer. But that's like something that I had, like, let's just have like a standalone arts and culture section of the comp plan.
Whether it's a standalone section or an appendix or integrated into all aspects, including land use and, everything. It's something that we can put on this list as we develop, say, a list of our top 3 or 4 things that we think we can work on in 2021, then we can slide these up and down. Like, that's not a terribly sexy thing to want to work on, but it might be something that stays in the mix, or maybe it drops out depending on these other items that are on this list that have been, that Anime has sort of consolidated into 3 groups. And maybe there's another group there. I don't know yet, but I think I just wanted to talk to that one, and I like the idea of one or 2 projects, whatever they are, and I like the connection part of connecting the community to the art that we have. I'm not really big on. I think we have a responsibility to protect assets in a education mode, but that's a job of our city to. Those are assets, just like a picnic table or a power pole or whatever. Our city's responsible for protecting those and maintaining those assets. Those are capital assets of our city. And so I'm not sure how we can protect that other than educating people about it to keep their eyes on it, be aware that there are thefts happening. And
Well, one way, Suzanne, is we could decide as a council to advocate to city council or to the city to budget to include lighting in our sculpture garden, not necessarily have it come out of our non-existent budget right now, but
you got me, I'm all with you on that one. I love that.
That was one of the only things when I talked to, I forget his name, one of the officers who I talked to about the art that was stolen, that some of the ideas were not, I guess, very easy to accomplish, but the lighting, I mean, it seems so simple, right? That lighting could prevent theft, but we don't have it. And that's something we've talked about for a long time. And I think
Well, that would be exciting because that
together
turns your-
advocate for it. I don't know what that looks like, putting it into our plan as, hey, city, this has happened twice. You guys need to help protect your assets. I mean, I don't know how to word it, but you know what I'm saying? Like we could advocate for that and put that as one of our goals.
That's great. Thank you. Suzanne, can I pass the mic off to Eric?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just went on.
really good.
I was going to piggyback on a few of those things. The lighting is a great idea, or even security cameras. I mean, security cameras are not that expensive anymore, and they deter theft as well. So I think that would be, and it just makes it more accessible, especially during the winter months. Of maybe people would be able to walk through or want to walk through the sculpture garden during the winter months when it's so dark all the time. Whether it's in the morning walking their dog, or early or late afternoon, or early evening. I think the policy, that's Suzanne, to piggyback on that, that's usually not a very sexy topic to work on. We're always about events, and I think during this is the time where we can't do a lot of events. Maybe this is the time to get down into the policy to set us up for always having, a seat at the table whenever we can. Maybe this is the time to focus on that. It doesn't cost a lot of money, may not need as much staff resources. So I think that's a good point. I like that. And then, again, a target of 1 to 2 projects, that third part piece that Anumeha did a good job of grouping everything. I didn't think of this either. We still, the 1% for the arts. I mean, do we want to engage that with a project because we present that to the council with, we're not asking for more money. The money is already there. That's the one aspect of what we have that we actually don't need to ask for more money. We just need to get it approved. So maybe we plan on, looking at, maybe it's one event or 1% for the arts project per year, per 3 years, per 5 years, but maybe put something in there that we're trying to stay on task with, because I know now it's been some time and we don't really have anything in the works.
Okay, thanks, Eric.
I'll just chime in that I love that idea of focusing on the 1% and coming up with something. I mean, I loved Suzanne's idea of coming up with a 1% project that commemorates what we're going through now. It's very timely. We could do something really nice for the community. My question with 1%, where I feel like we've gotten hamstrung in the past, is there some like significant policy issues that we have that would prevent us from accomplishing something? For instance, one of our last projects, the mural on West Mercer, took so long. Was that because of a failure of some of our outdated policies? Like, what would we need to do to set ourselves up to do to be successful with a 1% project? Maybe that's a Sarah question or a later to discuss question, but that's just the thought I had.
Sure, I love that. And thank you for asking a question, because that's part of what we want to do too, is make sure that we are posing those questions that may require that we go back and do some research or gather some information for you, so that then you can weigh again your priorities for the remainder of 2021. So we've got that one captured. Thanks, Erin.
And Gayleen is next.
So one of the things that I see in both the responses that people have provided, and then also just in the the way the Arts Council has developed, is that to me, and maybe you call this marketing, but we need to get more buy-in that what we're doing is providing a value to the community, and that buy-in needs to be from the council, and it also needs to be from the community. And I feel like I understand the policy ideas, but I feel that we really should be delivering something specific to the community in terms of projects, so that the community values us and we can take that value and help create buy-in from the community and from the council.
That's a great point, Gayleen. And I want to piggyback on that too, because this is something I've been thinking about with how our city is right now. And approaching whatever projects we do to be really tailored to what our community wants. How do we do that when a lot of people don't answer surveys and we get a lot more criticism than we get positive feedback? And one idea, I think I've sort of mentioned it, but to articulate it a little better, is to look at what the community is getting excited about and what people are focusing on. For instance, the train park, and that's getting revamped. I don't know what the status is of that, but it seemed like there was some movement in the community about that issue. So is there a way that we could insert ourselves to create something to partner with projects that people are already getting excited about? I mean, a great example is the seniors who are leaving, and they've even come to us, right? This is what they want to do. They want this to be their legacy project. This is meaningful to them. This is a class of kids that's basically doing their whole senior year online. And I think that's something we should really hear, that need is coming from them, instead of just creating our own ideas of what we think the community wants, really focusing on these hints that people are giving us, because sometimes they're not quite as overt, right? That's my thought.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to switch the screen because Sarah did try to put these in a few buckets, and I don't think those buckets are inconsistent with much of what you have been talking about. So I'm going to see if this also helps further our conversation. Let me get this sized up a little bit. Everybody see that okay? Okay. So Sarah tried to take everything that was in that last list that we looked at, and she put it into these 5 buckets, and they may or may not fit perfectly with what you just spoke about, because of course she created this before that discussion. But she thought maybe you can group those ideas for 2021 into the buckets of what is related to the kind of public art program or collection, what might be centered around delivering a program or an event, what's policy focused, what seems to be urging an action around collaboration, and then actions around funding. So this is just another way to view what was on that previous page. What I have heard in this discussion is quite a few people advocating for doing something in that policy realm. I've heard people advocate for doing, say, 1 to 2 projects. Perhaps one of those projects might involve utilizing the 1% fund. And I also heard a desire for perhaps one or more of those projects to be really focused on bringing the community together, providing for some community need, or as Erin said at the very end there, I love this, reading the hints, taking the hints and following on that path. So those are the main themes that I heard from your conversation. I'd like to take the pulse now and see if that seems like a good way to focus the rest of our conversation and try to build those out just a little bit more. Sarah also has made an attempt to kind of illustrate what we would do after we land on that small set of actions that we want to recommend to City Council, and that's to shape up the resources that might be needed. And so she put a little thought into what are the types of resources that we're going to need to identify to help the City Council understand our requests and meet that request. So we can go there after we put some details on your top priorities for 2021. So I'm going to turn it back over to you and say, for example, we could start by having a little bit more conversation around these 3 ideas. I'm hearing the desire to maybe focus some of our time in 2021 on policy development or revamping, on 1 to 2 projects to deliver to the community, and maybe the third, it may not be distinct from the second, is to talk about is there a way to bring community together with an arts focus? Anybody have?
Yeah, I think the third point and what Erin was alluding to was how to take those hints is more about collaborating and engaging with the community. So the third point could actually be covered under just collaboration. It can be collaboration across all the stakeholders, one of which is community and maybe seniors, like Erin used as an example. And I definitely see there's a big disconnect between City Council and the boards, and we should definitely take a look and put in or propose some changes to improve that. Because that's a pattern that I've been seeing like ever since I've been on the board, and it is quite apparent now with all of us working remote, and we have been shut down for so long.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts maybe on policy work? I've heard maybe focus on comp plan, maybe look at if there's any adjustments that need to be made to the 1% policy. It may also be fine to go to council with the recommendation that the Arts Council has an interest in focusing in 2021 on policies. And we might be able to give some examples, but we could also just keep that broad as well. I don't know that what you have suggested, for example, also needs to be accompanied with a resource request, for example.
Well,
Suzanne?
with the policy thing, we will need, I mean, if you'd eventually need some staff to put it into policy language, but I think I could see where we could independently kind of review the Art Council policies and see how they fit into maybe a longer term plan. And one of the things I'd suggested before was making sure that every capital project that the city does has to have passed through the Arts Council so that we can comment just as an advisory board, so that we can say something like, well, we eventually want to have a sculpture here. Would you provide lighting? Or this is a likely place where we're going to have an outdoor farmers market. Could you provide some outlets, while they're constructing? So I think there's a real advantage to kind of looking through all of that. And I'm just using that for an example. I don't want to scare council away that they think, uh-oh, here they come, So I think the less we say that, we just say that we want to review the integration of arts policies into the comprehensive plan and update the appendix that we have. So we have this opportunity to do that. And I don't think we need to get too specific, but we would need a couple of meetings, or probably more, 3 or 4 meetings of Arts Council time. And so that means staff time. And then whether they want to hire an outside person to put it, make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, that would be up to them. Or, we can suggest that if we want. But so I think that one's kind of easy. So I think the harder ones are, now I've got number 2 is marketing, more buy-in, collaborating, communication. So somebody want to take what that looks like, or the 1 to 2 projects?
I see Galen's hand, so maybe before that. Yeah, maybe before that. I don't know if your comments relate to that, Galen, or if they're separate. So maybe we'll go to
I'd like to talk a little bit, or just bring, my opinion on the policy issue before we resolve that one. I feel, and I know that this is before Suzanne joined the council, but we've spent a lot of time on policy. So I would prefer that we not have a general policy thing. If we're going to have a policy focus, that it'd be something specific, like how to get more funding for public art from private development, not just an overall, we're going to look at the policy, because I feel like we've spent a lot of time doing that. And I think it's more important at this point to actually take some sort of action that's visible in the community than to sit behind and just, generate policies and turn papers. I feel like it's time for action at this point.
Any other thoughts on policy work that you might want to engage in? One example I heard was investigate anything that might need to be done on the 1% fund in order to more successfully utilize that and have projects that you actually are undertaking.
I think it would be nice to have a worksheet or something, the way that the process that those funds get put to work. I mean, some of you were around for the last mural, but I wasn't, and I don't know what it takes to, make a major purchase of a $30,000 purchase or whatever. I don't know.
I think, to be fair on that one, it was WASDOT, it's WASDOT property. So I think a lot got tied timing wise on that one. But also with 1%, a more clear understanding of where those funds come from, and a real like update, a regular update on what's being added to that and why or why not. Because I know we've discussed that before, but I still don't think it's super clear, or maybe that's just me.
And maybe a history is maintained about it as well. Like, where are examples of 1% art? I mean, right now we have a bank account, and that really bothers me because I don't think anyone's enjoying it.
Exactly. And so that's to the point that Galen was making, is that let's use it. Let's do something. Let's not get bogged down. Let's just like quickly identify if there's any problems preventing us from really implementing that. I mean, there shouldn't be. We've used it before, but are there any like serious policy problems that impedes the functioning of the Arts Council? That's sort of what I was coming from. Like, is there something dire? And I would say probably not, but I think something that could really be helpful is to look at what the art, and Suzanne, well, you brought up the capital projects. Let's say that Arts Council needs to be advised of all capital projects. Maybe not all, like if they're redoing sewer lines or gas lines or something like that, but like include that and include Arts Council in the private development codes, along with, I've been saying this forever, along with the design.
I love it.
Is that like we're not codified into these processes, and we really should be, or I think we should be, so that there is like a formal place that it's written down somewhere that we should be, not just in practice, we've been consulted, but just to emphasize and highlight that collaboration should be going on. That's one thing that I think.
And that would be in the that's a great example. That should be in the development code. That, so I'm gonna go build a building on Mercer Island. I know I have to go through the design commission. I have to go through the planning commission. I should have to go through the Arts Council as well, and it can be just advisory. I don't even think we need, any powers, so to speak. We just want to say, hey, think about this. This is the south side of the building. This is where people want to be in the sun. They don't want to be on the north side of the building. So if you're going to do a plaza, do it on the south side.
Exactly. And in practice, that's happened. I mean, there was a whole panel advisory, a couple of us on the Arts Council that were advisory to the sound transit stations. And before my time, I know that it's happened. So if it's been happening, why not just easily ask for that to be put into the code? So that it doesn't stop happening, I guess.
Let me ask you guys what you think about this idea. I mean, because should we just kind of like, I feel like my book club here, should we just like say, let's just zone in on one thing right now? Like if we could only do one thing the rest of this year, can we, and can we come to a consensus on what that is? Then if we want, we can have other things below that, like the policy part. I think we probably do have some agreement on it, but maybe it's item number 4, what is item number 1? Let's start at what we're really committed to. What's number 1?
I like that approach. Like if we just had to pick one thing to do, like what would it be? That's a hard question though, Suzanne.
Well, it's the crux of it. I mean,
I gave you guys 3. I said, what are the 3 things?
And we tried to take the easy one, the policy one.
Anyway,
I think I like to group things because I'm seeing that pattern in my thinking today. I think the most important is combining the engagement and collaboration part, what Galen and Erin said, it's time for action. And just saying, how do we present ourselves to the community? How do we engage with them? How do we partner with them? And that can result in anything. That could result supporting local artists. That could result in us utilizing the 1% capital. that could also, or that could be like totally different, like, I don't know, like what Erin said before, like getting the feedback from community and building the value. So that's what I think we should be focusing on.
Okay, I have a great idea. I'm just going to say it because it builds on that. And I keep looking at this circle. You can't see my thing, but it's under the collaboration. Somebody put one thing that says convene local artists and arts groups to brainstorm. Like, what if we just had this Mercer Island Arts Summit on Zoom, of course, and invite all the Mercer Island artists to have a roundtable with us, and we can make it really fun. And it wouldn't even involve as much planning as like we were putting into the fly fishing event. You know, it would just be very minimal, but we could have the chaos theory kids who are like dying to perform. They're even like coming up with Zoom performances for free on their own because they just want an outlet. Like, let them have a segment where they perform for us, and then have the visual artists talk about what's going on, what are their needs, and make it really fun somehow. And so it's not so like, you know, let's talk about our needs, but let's be artistic and creative.
Is that maybe a website that people can post their performances
like
on?
Zoom, like it could be a follow-up website, but like an event where everyone sort of gets together, and it could serve two purposes. One, to get ideas for the community that we can back ourselves up with, to say, oh, you know, everyone really wanted us to do this humongous piece of public art on this site, so that's what we're going to do. Or everyone really wants us to, you know, do a laser light show. I don't know, just like, it'll give us support, right? It'll get that community feedback in a fun way. That's not a survey that no one answers. And then the side thing it gives is like an arts event and an outlet for creativity that people are missing.
You certainly could integrate quick surveys in it. Like you could have a performance and a survey, and a performance and a survey. I'm just trying to get an idea of what that might look like.
We could even make it a fundraiser, like make it a gala that everyone's doing on Zoom. Just kidding. I think that would be too much work, but
well, haven't you been in Zoom meetings at this point where they have the integrated surveys? So you actually are answering questions while you're on the Zoom?
Yeah, like they put a little pop-up poll, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. What if we did something like the Mercer Island, you know, Art Summit, and during that we had questions, polls that we sent out to get some specific written feedback? Then that way we could keep the time frame compared to just having it be like open mic and letting people put in.
And inviting the kids to perform,
Right.
make the parents attend it.
Yeah. But I think we also, like, as somebody whose kids are grown at this point, I don't want us to ignore the fact that we have a lot of adults on the island who are also artists who might be able to perform, and it wouldn't feel as much like a school event.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to think of what things have we done in the past. Well, we didn't test the fly fishing event, but things that people don't stop by us for, you know, like Art Uncorked. You have all the booths,
right.
and then the Arts Council booth, and no one stops by. You know, like, how can we attract like more people? What are some strategies to get that feedback from people? So we just have a hard time accessing.
Mm-hmm.
Is you know, Galen, you said you used the word open mic, and that kind of is an interesting thought. I mean, this is a huge community, and thinking of trying to do one art summit and to touch all. Oh, sorry. Let me figure that out. Sorry. I told her I was at a meeting. I think it'd be a challenge to do one event that, you know, took care of our seniors, our MyVols, our youth, our whatever. But, you know, maybe we could have some kind of art gallery, open mic maybe a series of maybe 3 different things or 4 different things that you, I don't know, could be musical performances, art, visual art.
Okay,
Yeah,
I heard that there was there's discussion on policy, doing some policy work, and perhaps trying to focus that on 1 or 2 policies or aims. One might be comp plan, one might be getting a better understanding of the process, the policy, the history, et cetera, about 1%. So I heard those as suggestions. And then I also heard trying to find some way to merge these objectives of collaborating, getting feedback, engaging, kind of marketing the value of arts and the Arts Council, finding something that does all of that, but is fun, right? And informative. And Aaron suggested maybe a way to do that is to hold some sort of arts summit that is a piece of each of those things. And then there's a thought that maybe that needs to be spread out over more than one time event. So what I'm looking for, I think right now is for those of you who haven't chimed in that last part of the discussion, how do you feel about Sarah and I working to package up those suggestions as maybe discrete items that you could evaluate at our next meeting as potential actions in the immediate action plan? Are you feeling like your colleagues that, yeah, those might be a few of the focus areas for 2021 that you would like to get behind? Okay, I'm seeing head nods. Thumbs up. Good. All right. So we have, looking back at document for a second, and then I'm going to turn it off. We've touched on, I think, a bit of program event, that realm. We've touched on policy. We've touched on collaboration, funding to the extent that we've talked about the 1% fund. Public art. Do we want to talk about any potential action that you might want to list in your immediate action plan that's coming from that group of ideas? Any thoughts, suggestions?
Well, I just think that there are ways to integrate that, like building community into some sort of activity to engage the public art. So there's overlap there. Like if we wanted to do some sort of socially distanced, safe, promotion of our public art collection while engaging the public. I'm not so sure how successful that would be. That's the only hesitancy I have with something like that. I think protecting the public art assets, again, there's some great ideas that we should advocate for, but there's probably limited things we could do. The security camera is really controversial. I've heard, Eric, that a lot of people don't want security cameras focused on them in the parks. And then personally, I love the idea of supporting the community mural, the senior project, focusing on helping them get something going since they came to us. Those
Okay.
are my thoughts.
A question
Great,
about
thanks.
that.
Erin, can I, Suzanne, can I just interject for a second so I can ask a clarity question? Erin, I agree with you that we can also see ways that the ideas that are under the public art column might be interconnected with some of the other topics that we've talked about tonight. Do you feel like having that summit or gathering more input, feedback, engagement from the community is necessary before we would move forward and decide what sort of action, if any, we want to take under that public art kind of column? Or do you think we could still pursue something like the mural project, kind of concurrent as we're seeking the engagement, the collaboration, discussion of policy, et cetera, et cetera?
I say option B because we already have some feedback from the community on.
Really good. Okay, thank you for that. That's helpful for me. Suzanne.
I just wanted to ask Sarah if she's heard any further information from the high school kids.
I haven't heard back from them since I last connected them with you, and I think Anime had kind of keep the conversation going.
I haven't heard anything either, and I am concerned that it might be difficult for them to pull off, and maybe they might lose interest with spring coming and that sort of thing. But what it does remind me of is something that would be a substitute for that and also help with that is coming up with potential mural sites on Mercer Island. I think that's something that we could do. And as I shared with Sarah, you know, there's certain utility boxes that could be wrapped, and some of them are right downtown and not very attractive. And also, you know, establishing relationships with like the Department of Transportation about putting murals on those basketball courts. And then another site was the stacks up on the lid by the tennis courts, whether that is an option for painting or murals, and also maybe reaching out to neighbors up there that maybe may or may not want to have that done. So I think there's a whole, and even wrapping the utility boxes. I mean, the ones I'm thinking of that I find most hideous are, they would be private. They're on a public sidewalk, but they are a private piece of equipment. So, you know, I think there's a lot of work that could be done there to pave the way for some visual arts having to do with murals and even empty storefront windows. I mean, we've had our first murals downtown near the wine store, and I think it's been really nice having that mural. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I've certainly appreciated it. And so that's the whole mural thing, is a way to outreach to the community that's very visible, and it's kind of contemporary of the times, which sort of is a theme here. So
Great, thank you. Other thoughts about public art actions that you might want to take in 2021?
oh my God.
I guess I'll ask, you've had this inquiry from the seniors, it sounds like high school seniors. Do you want to keep that on the plan, on the 2021 potential plan, to play that out, see if there is indeed still interest, and continue to ask the questions about whether or not it could be pulled off, whether there's still interest, or whether you need to pivot. Maybe it's not that particular group that you're working with anymore, but maybe you still want to do some sort of mural related activity, and then keep it broad enough that you can build out the game plan on that.
My vote is on the latter.
Thank you. Okay. I think, are at that moment, Sarah. Do you want to just share an example of the kinds of questions that you think we need to wrestle with a little bit as we start to think through what sort of resources might be necessary to identify before we take an immediate action plan and its components to the city council? And I would say Arts Council, I think this is a worthwhile little tangent to go down at the end of the meeting, because it is our next step to come back to you with the synthesis of ideas from tonight and a package that may represent the immediate action plan you want to go forward with to city council. And as we've spoken about, we want to package up those ideas with a request to council for any of the implementation resources you might need to get those things off the ground. And so Sarah and I will be busy over the next week, say, trying to answer the questions of what do we need in order to get this action off the ground.
I'm
And
sorry.
so I think she could share an example. Yes, Suzanne.
So I must have missed, what specific action are we trying to accomplish?
So I summarized right before the last discussion on murals that we might be wanting to put forward an immediate action plan that includes an action item around policy work. And that policy work might be one of two things or both
Okay,
things.
got that. Okay.
Yeah, got that one? Okay, so that's
And
one.
low priority for what I'm hearing from everybody. That's the low priority. So let's move up to the highest priority.
Sure. So then I also heard this idea of finding a way to generate some engagement and collaboration and seek feedback and input from community. And I heard as a suggestion, some sort of collaboration forum, a summit, art summit.
So that's what I was wondering. Are you and
yeah.
Sarah going to offer some other alternatives to the Mercer Island Arts Summit? I don't want to go too far down the funding path until I know what we're doing. I mean, I think we all have been on this council long enough. We have a pretty good sense of how long, what staff time takes, what council or arts council time takes. And, I'm not worried about it. I'm worried about what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. I want to bring up that the art summit idea is really off the cuff and like not well thought out. So I don't necessarily think that we should make that like, oh, it's a priority because I just came up with it and nobody else did anything else. Like we sometimes need maybe some time to think about.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. If these guys, if our staff and our consultant are going to come up with more ideas. I mean, so the thing that I wrote down was marketing, more buy-in, collaborating, engagement, and communication. And if that is what you guys heard, how, the question is, okay, that's what we want to accomplish. How are we going to do that? And one suggestion was the Arts Summit. I'm asking, is there something else, or are we going with Arts Summit? And I don't want to cost anything out until we decide how we're accomplishing this. And does everybody else agree that this is our top mission here?
You mean broadly to engage the community is our top mission?
Yeah. Again, I'll just marketing, more buy-in, collaborating, communication, and engaging the community.
I think so. I I think that's ideally what we're needing, right? After a year of not seeing each other. I'm just trying to think if that's the most narrow way to articulate what our top priority is. Because that could mean a lot of things, right? Like, I mean, you can engage the community by doing a social media campaign, or you can engage them by having people gather for wine at the sculpture garden, or you can have an online art summit, or you can have, I mean, that's such a broad term. Like, do we want to be more specific?
And I'm concerned that if our focus is on a online art summit, that may not be like something that people are particularly interested in right now. People are really burned out on being online all day. I just, it would be great if we could think of another way that was something that was more interactive, like, with people actually having the opportunity to COVID safe, like have a time slot where they came in and they painted part of the mural, or, something else, the other way that there's actually a physical presence of engagement.
Or
Or
if we
maybe
had
we-
like, I was gonna say, if we had like stations in the park where you've got people, there's an easel there and someone's painting and there's someone else playing the violin, and you just walk through the park socially distanced and you get to experience art that you haven't been able to do for the last year, albeit how small. I mean, then you've got weather issues and other things, but maybe it's something like that.
I
Instead of,
like that, Eric, like stations, like there
Yeah.
might be just chalk, sidewalk chalk that you can, in the sculpture garden, and you can just grab a sidewalk chalk and chalk up the sidewalk, or a bubble thing and down at Mercerdale, and the kids can grab the bubbles and, run through the park. I'm sure I love the lanterns, your own, send them a lantern kit and let them put it up somewhere. It could be anywhere. I do like some physical activity type thing. That's it. I think if you did something like that, you really get people talking. I don't know, Sarah, have people been positive about the lanterns? I thought they were beautiful.
They have been. We've received a lot of really positive comments, both from those who participated in the project to create the lanterns, and then, just the general community. That is the project that is a strong example of collaboration between several different groups. That's brought a lot of different audience members, including, people from off island who are connected to artists on the island and everything. So, what I'm hearing from this is definitely a physical arts engagement opportunity to cultivate that connection. I think we need to refine what that can be. The Island Lanterns project, everyone made their artwork on their own, or in some cases in their little pod at home, and then it was installed by a small group of people, and people can engage with it at will. So it is an opportunity. You could think about something along that scale, or similar things along that scale. Maybe there is a way to do some sort of art summit in a way that you solicit feedback from other partners, other community members, what artists need, but also what families and residents at Aljoya and students need. Maybe there's a way for them to engage, provide that participation in a summit that isn't virtual, that is in person but socially distant.
Erin?
Can I just add one thing? So just to play devil's advocate a little bit, to help us think a little more around this possible idea, is that everyone's tired of being on Zoom. So we want to do something physical, but because of the constraints of COVID, we have to do these things individually. So it's not really like building connections between people. Well, it could be building like an ephemeral community. I just want to think a little bit more on that, like ways to, if people are engaging in pieces of art individually, it comes together as a big project, how can we maybe document that somehow to make it connect people again or connect them after the fact? I'm thinking of like George Lee's art. It's amazing. I love it. It's so great for our community. But at the same time, I don't think it necessarily makes me feel super connected to you guys because we're not getting to go hang out and look at it in person and comment it on it in person and engage together around it. So is there any way to reconcile that? Like, we all want to get off Zoom, but we can't really all get together yet. But how can we fulfill that need to engage and connect with people through art physically? That's my question.
Anna-Maya?
Yeah, actually, we are focusing a lot on just visual arts, but we could do it with like, you know, I saw somewhere here about poetry and literary. We could have, you know, socially distant, I don't know if we have those things here, but in India, you have like those recitals. It could be, you know, you gather and somebody is reading out poem, which is very, very nice to hear. Like someone is doing it in a rhythm. So we could do that. It could be like somebody, I'm not like too familiar with the literary world, but we could explore different forms of art. It's not just visual arts or public arts. It could be something completely different.
I totally agree with that. I think the difficulty in the COVID time is delivering other forms of art to a large amount of people, right? Like you have to have ways that people can engage in person separately or use digital means to have some sort of performance type thing.
Yeah, could we use our community center like in limited capacity as per the guidelines, or that's out of reach?
Well, it's out of reach for a while. We're still working on the plan for public access. That's part of the Parks and Recreation Commission's work. So, and I'll plan to give you an update in your next meeting on their phases, what they're planning perhaps to recommend to bring back and over what timetable.
Okay. So then I guess like a mural project seems to be a more engaging, like people can take turns, book a time slot and come and work on like 1 or 2 murals across the city.
So thank you. Yeah, I think it was great input also thinking about the other media and means and arts. I also heard Aaron and Sarah speak to the need to do things that are maybe a little distinct. So there's this engagement seeking feedback desire, right? That has its own considerations. You know, how do you shape something up that's effective to get that? And then I also heard there's a desire to have engagement for the purpose of cultivating connection, marketing, celebrating arts, you know, all of those aims, not necessarily to derive feedback, but to produce, to receive in a different way. And we may think about 2 different vehicles in order to achieve those objectives. We may find the perfect thing that does all of it, but we also can be open to opportunities to run some sort of engagement that solicits feedback and input and helps us to identify needs and desires. And we might also find a separate, distinct way to engage community and to enhance that connection through arts. So I'm not sure that we have yet, you know, the thing, but I think there's been really good discussion, and I think there's general consensus about what the objectives are, and that's great. That's really great. And I think we can build off of that. I'm cognizant of the time, Sarah. I don't know, how you manage meeting times. But I would offer that perhaps you all could, if you come across a great idea, you can, or you have a brainstorm in the next few days, or you've learned about another community doing something that you think fits these objectives and you'd love to replicate, you send us that idea. Sarah and I can also try to generate a few ideas that hone in on those objectives. And I'm pushing us, and I'm pushing us because at our next meeting, we want to try to get enough detail on it so that we're going to be able to put together that immediate action plan and get it woven into the package that will ultimately go to council. So we do need to keep kind of narrowing it down and getting particulars together. Erin?
Oh, Galen has had her hand up, so.
Okay.
I was just like, this is, brain flash. I haven't thought it out at all, but I was wondering, in response to the idea that maybe it's not visual arts, maybe it's a spoken word of some kind, whether we would be able to create like community collaboration by putting out like a call for people to, submit haiku or to submit some short amount of prose, and everybody sends them in and we bundle them together to create this community art project and it could be in response to a prompt like, what have you learned about yourself during COVID, or, so we could pick some prompts, have people respond to those, collect those, and make them like publicly available online. So it would be completely COVID safe.
What if we publish an actual book? Like a physical book, Galen. I love
with
that.
me.
I would buy that. Or yeah.
Well, I love it, Galen. I like the collection and the stimulation and the kind of, the release for people that want to share something about this experience. And I also think it's great for the history part of it. And it also may help us if we do want to have our 1% for art major monument. This is the kind of information that will help feed what that is, I think.
I think it's a beautiful idea. And that it could be something, if we actually published a printed book, like something that people can hold on to, tangible, to remember these wonderful, beautiful times.
Yeah. There's got to be other venues though for sharing it. I'm not sure what it is. I mean, I'm thinking, I don't think I'm gonna put it out in the city newsletter, but I mean, I think we could combine it with art, with visual art, and do an online book that would be really quite lovely.
And music or dance or any.
Yeah.
I think I think you all have the idea here, and I think you're kind of throwing out sort of immediate pieces. How do we get, maybe community members to create these pieces to start, and then how does it grow and live as a way to sort of commemorate this time, and something we can share and celebrate together when we are able to all get back together. So you are kind of, whether you knew it or not, you went from immediate action plan maybe to longer term plan to some extent. So I think that these are really, really fantastic ideas that, like Emily said, she and I will go away and we have a lot of work on our hands. But I think that there's a lot of really great progress that you guys have made tonight in sharing all of these ideas. So thank you.
Eric, a couple of minutes ago, I thought maybe I had seen you signal. Did you have something you wanted?
Oh, I was going to bring up with the other, how we were struggling initially in the other council, the other commission, what their goal was, or they were bringing back camps, summer camps. Was that what they were doing?
Correct.
So obviously that's with COVID, I mean, they've got challenges with that, but that's something that's realistic. What if ours, to add on what we've just recently talked about, is maybe offering arts classes. People haven't been able to take any art classes. So if we get local artists that are, maybe they've, a teacher that can teach a painting class and they do it outside, socially distanced, or a pottery class or something simple. It could be a 20-person, 30-person, but again, it's engaging the community. They get to do something they haven't done in a year, and it's small. And then we're also paying a local artist to do it. So you're supporting local artists, you're giving something to the community, and it's safe and easily, you can move it. If it doesn't work out someplace, or the size, we have other restrictions, we could adapt it.
That's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great idea, Eric.
Okay.
I have one last question before we move on, because it's just in my head, and I just want to get the like yay or nay. I mean, it might not even be a feasible idea, but at the beginning of the pandemic, some other communities, I think, did or attempted to do, and actually our Mercer Island community on their own, on some private property, did some drive-in movies. Is any event which involves people gathering inside their cars, is that just like or not feasible because of space, or something that the city would not support due to COVID rules? I'm just curious what the.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I'm not sure I have the answer to that, quite frankly.
I can speak to it a little bit, Emily. It's Ryan Daly. That is something that some were doing on private property. We have gotten some guidance around it. I will say it's a possibility of something we could offer if we found the correct site, especially as we move forward into different phases. I think that could be something that would be a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
because then it could be a movie, it could be a performance, it could be a musician, everyone in their cars with the families in a parking lot. So there's some different options there for sure, if it could work.
Yeah, I was just trying to envision how that would happen in my own brain. Like, I mean, think of the nightmare of all the cars pulling up onto Mercerdale lawn, right? That's awful. But
I think someone tried to do it this summer, right? Didn't the J try to do it? Someone tried to pull it off this summer, but couldn't do it.
I don't know.
You're correct. There were some restrictions that were in place that made it very challenging, especially for us as a city with our insurance provider. So there's some logistical challenges that absolutely are there, and it depends on the parameters of the event, so to speak. When they're run on private property, there was significant concerns from some of the property owners, or I should say their insurance providers, by doing so. But that's not to say it's not something that we can't evaluate and look at what the opportunity might be.
Hey, really good work. Thank you for all the good input. Thank you for sharing with each other and pinging ideas back and forth. Sarah and I will try to pull this together into maybe some proposals for you to mull over at the next meeting. And we'll see if we can land in a place where we have enough detail, but maybe not too much, to be able to go forward to City Council to say, this is what we think we want to focus on in the remainder of 2021, and this is what we might need in order to pull it off. Great. Thank you all.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Okay, is that back to me?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate all your work on this, Emily. Thank you. Okay, so I think that we have some other business. Yes?
Yes, we have one other thing that Eric and I just wanted to update everyone on that we weren't able to get it onto the agenda before the packet went out on Friday, but Eric and I met with the architect team for the Xinghua development. And as you may recall, I think back in December, Arts Council directed staff to kind of go back to the team and suggest an opportunity to collaborate on an art element for the proposed development rather than just strictly reciting a work of public art. So we talked with the architects on Friday and kind of shared the concerns, the interest in collaborating. We talked through again some of the options that we had initially talked with them about, including potentially purchasing a work of art from the outdoor gallery, working with the Arts Council to commission a piece. And through the conversation, we brought up again the sculpture Fireflower, which was on view at Farmers and is now in storage because it was our first victim of attempted theft for bronze. So Eric actually had the great idea to kind of, propose to them, since that piece is kind of living in a public art graveyard, to be honest, right now. It's, waiting to be repaired, and then we will have to recite it eventually. Could we possibly partner with this developer to repair the piece and install it on their public facing property as part of the development? We talked through some ideas with this and kind of looked at some mock-ups of where they were originally thinking about putting art. So I have just kind of a picture to show you all. So hold on just a second. Can you all see this JPEG? Okay, so this is southeast corner of the development, which, as you may know or may recall, is going to be kind of across from Met Market right now. And they've created this plaza, which is part of one of their main public benefit options that they're offering as part of the development. And we talked to them about the possibility of incorporating Fireflower in that space rather than maybe just plugging and playing a piece or anything like that, but actually taking this work of art, which has been in the public art collection for a very long time. It was actually the first piece in the city's public art collection, and kind of giving it new life. So knowing that it's gone through the sort of traumatic situation now of being damaged, and it's a much beloved piece that maybe was underutilized in its former location, and really installing it in more of a prominent space. It would technically be on the development property, but it would be kind of, as this rendering shows, pretty prominent in their development. And they also really liked the idea, if you can see a little bit, there's some tree plantings. These are kind of existing city trees, and then there would be other tree plantings that they would include. And they liked the idea of kind of framing, creating a frame with these trees and then having Fireflower essentially grow in the middle as another kind of tree or living piece. Through that, we kind of talked with them, what could some of the negotiations look like? So potentially, they could, depending on cost, we could explore them paying to repair and recite the piece at that location. They liked the idea of actually like designing the planting and the space kind of around that piece. So rather than, again, just sort of clunking it down, it needs a new base because the base was damaged. So they would work with us to really design something around it. So it, really looks like that's where it's meant to live or its new home will be. So, this is obviously is kind of a a bit of a compromise, I guess, between just straight reciting a work of art from the gallery and commissioning a new piece. And I think, you know, our in conversation with the architects and kind of having a little more understanding of the project and the owner's desires, I think this is, you know, a pretty fair compromise. I would bring new life to a piece of art that's long been in the collection, but has maybe been neglected or passed over to some extent. And, you know, could also set kind of a new path forward through this whole process of kind of building relationships with these developers. We're kind of giving them an opportunity to bring maybe some goodwill to the community by, you know, helping us restore this piece. And in turn, you know, we're kind of getting an opportunity to put this piece at a new location that's still downtown and part of something that could be new and exciting. So I'm going to stop sharing now and just kind of ask Eric to share his input from the meeting, and then happy to kind of take some questions and get some feedback from you all.
Sure. My computer just died, so I was offline the last 5 minutes, so I missed everything you said. But I will go off of what I remember from the meeting. You know, I thought that you know, they've done a nice job trying to engage us. They've done a nice job trying to include us. And it's not something they necessarily have to do. I mean, we want them to, you know, projects such as this to engage the Arts Council. So I would, you know, if we can work with them on providing any, you know, any kind of assistance. And you know, in going back to this piece, you know, it's a piece that's damaged right now in storage, no immediate plans for it to get back out to the world. Its previous location, as you guys may know, wasn't the best location anyway. This would be a better location than where it was previously at. So I think that could be, you know, something to consider as well in all of this. And you know, they work with us, and this maybe sets the table for the next developer to want to reach out to us. Now, obviously, we're not going to provide them all with pieces of art to recite, but you know, I feel like this is different than purely just them picking a piece of work and having it recited, that it's currently just perfectly fine where it is. So, you know, I didn't. If you guys commented while I was out, I didn't hear that, but yeah, I'd welcome any kind of thoughts on this potentially. And again, you know, this is, we're kind of helping them choose the piece, if you will, as well. You know, they might put something out there that we may not like, but yeah, I don't know. I thought the meeting went really well. They're willing to work with us, and I think that's great.
And I just have two more comments really quickly, and then I'll turn it back over really for everybody else's feedback or comments. One, when we kind of started talking about Fireflower, everyone on the architect team was very excited about it. Like, they immediately kind of brought up, you know, shared the screen, did the schematic, figured out how they could fit it in. You know, loved the piece, loved it before when we were kind of talking about it very early on, but weren't sure size-wise if it was going to fit or anything like that. So I think their enthusiasm was really encouraging to me about this piece. Secondly, you know, I think originally in conversation with Ryan Companies, who is redeveloping the Farmers site, they were talking about keeping Fireflower on their property, but potentially incorporating it in a different area, maybe in a more kind of public facing area. That conversation has sort of been tabled as they're exploring, you know, they're working on their other internal or indoor renovations and everything like that. So this could actually bring up, by kind of identifying a new plan for this piece on a different site, it could also provide the opportunity to talk with Ryan Companies about something new. So it's, you know, it doesn't necessarily take away the conversation around a new work of art on a private development. But because the Xinhua project is moving forward, it just kind of gives another way to work with those developers and preserve a work of art that was already downtown. So with that, I will take in.
Does anyone have any thoughts or questions? Just me? Again? Okay, well, I love the enthusiasm around it, and I think it's beautiful what they're doing with the siting of it and making it more prominent and incorporating landscaping into highlighting it. I can't not say that it worries me that we're just handing them a piece of art, and it's not a net new piece, right? I mean, why are we not focusing on the Ryan properties as the property to help restore and bring new life to that piece and integrate it into their new development, into their siting? Because from what I've heard, they're opening up like a public plaza and making it more accessible to the street and public for farmers market and things like that. And I just wonder if it relieves them of any duty of bringing new art to the island.
Well, I think that's a fair point. Does anybody else have feedback or comments or questions?
I'm just not sure how much negotiating room we have if they're not actually required to do anything.
Yeah, and I think that in particular is why this compromise seemed really favorable, because this developer has been really great about working with the community. Or working with the city at least, to make sure that they're exploring and kind of checking off every box. From things outside of arts, of course, but also I had conversations very early on with them about public art elements and how to incorporate and work with the Arts Council. So I think this developer is maybe more keen to work with us than other projects in the past. So I think that presents it as a good opportunity, but like Eric said, they don't have to do this. They don't necessarily, because essentially, they're as it stands right now, we share feedback, we can provide feedback and comment on it, and ultimately the design commission will approve, their design mock-ups and everything. It's not the Arts Council as the process and code stand right now. So the fact that they're still willing to work with us after all of a year of conversations, I think is probably a collaborator we may want to stay involved with. But I understand it's not necessarily a new work of art. It's not purchasing anything that's for sale in the gallery and by way of supporting future arts programs or projects. But it is restoring a piece. It is making it, well, not guaranteed, because obviously there's still more process to go through, but it's one step closer to getting that work of art back out into the community. But yeah, I understand, Erin's concerns as well, for sure.
Yes, as a more of like a philosophical question, do they not want to provide public art in their new development? Is this we're pulling at them? I mean, it just seems to me like these developers would want to create a visually pleasing and engaging place for people. And I mean, if we weren't presenting this as an option, are they more inclined to just not have any art as part of it? Or What's the vibe?
It's what I think what they initially had was very small. So if it was going to be anything, it would be very minimal. It wouldn't be kind of showcasing like this would be, unfortunately. And I think too, I mean, one of the gals made a comment, you know, they're not trying to, you know, I think there was a misunderstanding early on where they thought that the sculpture park was going to be moved anyway, and so these were pieces that initially didn't have a home, and so they thought of themselves maybe as helping out with this. They felt that all these pieces were going to be relocated. Maybe here's an opportunity to work with the Arts Council. So I mean, that's still a possibility, but we have no idea. And so it went from that to then, you know, well, here are some pieces that are for sale. You know, and if not this piece, I thought maybe too, you know, are there other pieces that are damaged that really don't have any kind of a future right now, you know, that are just sitting in the warehouse waiting to find a good spot. And I think this is a good spot. So I don't know if there's another piece that we could recommend to them, but this is one that they got pretty excited about. So, you know, it's hard. I get it. And I don't want to, you know, set this up to other, you know, developers thinking, well, we'll just pull art from the Arts Council. You know, and that was kind of our initial view on this early on was, well, absolutely not. But I kind of look at this, you know, and there's still some controversy with the Ryan project, as you know, Aaron. So there's a lot of unknowns with that project. That
No, I don't know. Do you want to fill us in? Do I know? I don't know.
Oh, I thought well, I won't talk about it here, but I don't know. I mean, you know, this is kind of a more of a guarantee now in the immediate future of getting this piece back out that I think a lot of people really enjoy. Is how I try to look at this. And it still sets, you know, it sets up to other developers maybe wanting to work with us again to some level. Again, they don't have to. This, you know, maybe this sets us up, well, maybe we need to, you know, it benefits both parties.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that seizing the opportunity that's at hand is definitely a good way to look at it. It just, like you said, setting a precedent worries me. And I'm curious to hear more about what's going on at the Ryan properties and if they are not inclined to include new art. I don't know. I mean, did they have a plan to incorporate that piece into their new refurbishing of that plaza? Or
so in my last conversations with the project manager at Ryan Companies, we were going to kind of bring the conversation to the Arts Council at the end of last year. And then they wanted to push the conversation out to either end of first quarter, beginning of second quarter this year. Initially, very, very early on when I talked with them and learned more about, you know, their initial plans for the area, kind of creating a more public facing plaza along the street, I believe, and then maybe some interest in reciting that work of art and putting it, you know, in that plaza area or moving it. I think at one point talking about moving it into Bicentennial Park or something like that. So again, kind of unknowns. We need to re-engage with them, with Ryan Companies, with the project manager to see what is possible now. I guess you know, we are up against a time constraint right now too, because the Xinhua project has been accepted for permitting, so it's going through design review. It's moving along, you know, and there's opportunity for public comment tomorrow night. And so I think this is just kind of a good chance, you know, we wanted to talk with you all about it, knowing that there's a public hearing tomorrow with the Design Commission, just to get your pulse on you know, is this an opportunity to continue explore? Of course, there's still negotiations that would need to happen. They've, you know, very pointedly would not give us any guidance on their budget for art or any other kind of public amenities. So there's still a lot of work and conversation that needs to happen there. It seemed pretty likely that commissioning a new work of art was off the table based on how they talk, you know, I think at one point it was mentioned that, you know, commissioning a new work, or if they spend more money on art, it's less money for things like trees and other amenities. So take that how you will. I don't necessarily perceive that as a disinterest in incorporating art, but there's a lot of considerations there and a lot of different ways to define public amenity and public benefit in our code. So, but take that as you will.
Sorry to come late to the discussion, but we could also put some parameters on it, like having it lit at night or having it in a prominent location. So we can weigh in on some of those things, like might be nice to be very visible.
Yeah, let me show you, Suzanne, if you didn't see it. I'm sharing my screen again. So we're talking about this piece, Fireflower, and this is the Southeast Plaza in the Xinhua development. So fairly prominent location. And we've talked with them about kind of designing this planting bed around the piece. Would be potentially framed by 2 trees, so it looks like another kind of growing something in that area, and also possibility of working with them to cover costs for repairing the piece after it was damaged. So definitely considering a lot of those things, but would still have to work through that. So I guess really what we're just kind of looking for tonight, what the architects team asked for is just general direction, how the Arts Council is feeling, you know, and if this is a direction that you were, you know, okay with moving forward with, supportive of moving forward with, that will kind of give us the direction to go back to the development team and start talking about what a partnership in that way would look like. But if, you know, there are other opportunities you want to explore or you're unsure, like, of course, that's totally fine. But, you know, we would like to be able to go back to them and let them know whether we're supportive of this direction or not, so they can kind of reevaluate their plans.
Wow. I wish I didn't miss the beginning of this. So they literally want to use a piece of art that belongs to the city.
So I'm sorry, Suzanne. So just to recap really quickly, Eric and I met with the architect team last Friday to kind of go back to the drawing board and talk about a collaboration. And through some of the, you know, we talked through some of the options that you all had brought up back in December when we talked about this. So the potential of working with the Arts Council to commission something new, you know, as a way to kind of support the community, bring goodwill to the community, going back to the idea of purchasing a piece from the outdoor gallery again. Then through those conversations, Eric and I talked with them about the state of Fireflower right now, how it's deinstalled and damaged, and started talking with them about, you know, reciting the piece there under the stipulations that they would help us repair the piece, so pay for the cost of the repairs, place it in a prominent place. I mentioned to everyone kind of as we were in the meeting on Zoom, one of the designers just kind of shared his screen and we looked at the plaza together, kind of redesigning, moving some elements around. So actually moving they had kind of a very small work of art in a not great place at all. And so this moving it to a much more prominent location, creating kind of a planting, creating a space, like a very unique or a specific space for that piece of art to be installed, also knowing that the base is damaged, so we have to get that repaired too anyways. So they were all very excited about that. And what Eric and I, our takeaway from that conversation was really, you know, this seems like a good compromise based on maybe the unwillingness to, or not unwillingness, but the desire to not commission something completely new. And, you know, but the desire to still work with the Arts Council to provide an art element, create or add an art element to their development. Yeah, Anna Mayhe.
I think it's a balanced approach, because right, rather than pushing, knowing that we might not be able to succeed in someone commissioning a new art, it's better to give life to an existing art that, you know, didn't have a future. And I think we could leverage this type of model for another development that you just mentioned, because they are like, if you want us to commission a new art, then, you know, the trees have to be taken out. I don't think that's the right way to have the conversation. Maybe we could offer them something similar and say, hey, this is a piece in our, you know, collection, it needs new life. Would you be willing to do that and put it in a prominent location, or, you know, set up lighting? I think these are like good starter topics, or you know, something that every party can work with. So I like it.
Okay. Anyone, I mean, there's not really a vote that needs to happen on this because there's still conversation that I think needs to move forward, but, you know, thumbs up on kind of continuing the conversation with the developers. Maybe there is still an opportunity to kind of try to look at something new, create something new. But how are you all feeling about moving forward kind of with this conversation, with the possibility of Fireflower getting some new life in that area?
I would hope, though, that instead of just saying there's a possibility that they would help pay for the cost of the repair, that they just take it and pay for the repairs, pay for the base, and consider it their contribution.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the number one goal and hope. Yep.
And what is the exit strategy? Do they get it forever, or how are we going to have a plan?
Well, that's a good question, because we're actually running into that kind of issue with Fireflower itself. That piece was, you know, in the 80s, installed as a work of art at the Farmers Building on a private development. And now that site is being redeveloped, and there isn't a guarantee that the developer wants to keep the piece. So this is also kind of an opportunity to, you know, recite it in a way that may work for the community, or that we think might work for the community, in a timeline that, you know, we can work with, because not sure like what's going to happen with Ryan companies, because we still need to re-engage them in the conversation, and their timeline is different than the timeline for Xinhua. So I think this would be maybe a good process to document as part of that art and private development conversation, if that is a policy item that you all end up taking on in the next couple of years.
Yeah,
So if you guys reach an agreement with Xinhua, I mean, are you going to say you get to borrow it for 20 years, or what are you going to say? Are you just giving it to them?
No, we would not be giving them the piece. The city would still own and maintain the work of art in the same way that we own and maintained Fireflower on a private development. I guess what I'm saying to you is that's part of the negotiation. We need to figure that piece out. You know, the city will still own the piece. We are not giving it up by any means.
I just wanted to point out that the problem with that piece has occurred because it was on a piece of private property that was vacant with no lighting and no security. And I guess I understand the approach. I'm just very disappointed that this conversation isn't about bringing the Arts Council to give input into this offering that a developer is giving to our community. I mean, even Sound Transit came up with their own really cool art plan for their stations, right? And maybe this is just how the
I
developers
feel like it's
are.
almost another policy issue that needs to go into the comprehensive and actually the development code. I mean, it's always been an issue in Mercer Island that when a new building comes in, they have to do certain things to get extra story or whatever. And oftentimes it's art. I don't know what Xinhua has decided their amenities that they are giving. You know, they have the Plaza requirements. But if they're giving art, we probably should have some specifications about, you know, the quality and size and location and maintenance and all of this. We have never had that. I mean, we have gotten some pretty janky donations to our city, which somebody has gotten an extra floor on their building because they put up a clock, you know, that doesn't work. So that might be another policy thing that we need to look at. And I don't know how much the design commission is, maybe it's in their codes. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and I think Erin would agree big time since she's been so vocal about this for a long time. And I agree 100%. You know, this is the first development in town center that we're seeing for a long time. I think that there was an opportunity to button up that code and that policy a few years ago in anticipation of something like this. You know, in a perfect world, the Arts Council would have updated that code or policy 3 years ago. So when Xinhua came to the island, we would have had policy in hand for creating that. Unfortunately, we don't have it. So I agree that it's a good idea to include that in, you know, any future policy work you may undertake as part of this reset plan, or, you know, when the Arts Council gets back up to full speed. I think to create the policy to satisfy this specific development that.
Oh, no, I'm not trying.
Yeah,
to do
no,
that.
I know that's not what you're saying,
I'm saying that
Suzanne.
just add that to the list of things that
Yeah.
we need to do sometime in the next few years.
Yeah.
But so is Xinhua, is that providing a public art and amenity that they have promised the city to provide as contingent to their development? Or is this an add-on? That's a nice, they don't have to do it, but they're willing to do it if they're working with us.
Yeah, so I believe it is one of the minor or the minor public amenities that they have said they'd be willing to provide. And the conversation, I think, started around the art element. And I don't know if you were on the call when Eric mentioned this, but, you know, originally they were thinking that a lot of artwork in the outdoor gallery would be displaced by a forthcoming Tully's redevelopment, which we all know is on hold indefinitely. And so at that time, they were thinking there's going to be these works of art that need to be recited. So we're helping the city out by, you know, exploring one of those options. And I believe it was probably someone in CPD and the planning department who was working with them who let them know about that. I think I first got connected with them through one of our former planners. Without that, honestly, it may, because there's no policy in place, that the conversation may have never started. or it may have started even, I've been talking with them since March or April. This may have been the first time we got the chance to talk with them right before their,
But I just wanted to
review.
have the concrete information of, are they required by their permits to provide public art? Galen
No.
says no.
No.
So they must have done something else instead.
Mhm.
And maybe it was the plazas.
Yeah, because I think there's at least 2 plazas, public facing plazas in their development.
Okay, well, if they're not required to have public art, then that seems like a great opportunity to have it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So they're not using providing public art as one of their, it's
Like an offset kind of thing or a requirement.
it says, right, you have to pick one of the, or 3 of the things from this list of 5. Is
Mhm.
public art one of those things they've chosen to fulfill their requirements under the code?
No, it's
No.
not. So public art is, and I'll go back and confirm this. I haven't combed through their permits 100%. Public art's considered a minor benefit. Something like a plaza is considered a major benefit. So you can do like 3 of the 5 minor, or you can do, 2 of the big or something like that. So yeah, again, it's not a requirement. It's something that they've been willing to work with us on to enhance their development. And also originally they thought that, they'd be helping the city out by reciting something from the outdoor gallery. Obviously, we're not talking about that anymore, but. Okay. We're at 9 o'clock. I think if I can just get a thumbs up to just continue the conversation, no decisions will be made or anything like that. Okay, I see 4. Okay. All right. We'll keep you posted. I think since Eric has been in the conversations, he and I will kind of continue stewarding this along. But if there's anyone else who wants to share input or feedback or, offline, please reach out to us to let us know. Okay. Thank you. That's all I got.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. Are there any last minute questions or comments or any other business before we adjourn?
I had 2 more ideas.
Okay.
Online cooking classes. It's a cultural activity, and you can involve a lot of people, and they meet in their own pods, and I've done a couple of them. They're really, really fun, and people would get to know each other, and you'd see other families in their kitchens.
That's a cool
Garden
idea.
tour
Garden tour?
or private art tour. Like, would have people, there's a lot of private art in people's gardens here on Mercer Island. Come on, let's go, girls.
We need to have just a separate idea brainstorming session.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there is nothing further, then I will adjourn the meeting at 9:03, and we'll see everyone back here in March, right?
Yes, March 10th.
March 10th. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for staying on a little bit longer. Have a great night.